Welcome to the trade. Episode 14. We are doing an interview today with Jessica Abel, a longtime comics person. Usually within the indie scene is generally the work that I know of Jessica. What all work have you done exactly, especially in the past couple of years? I know you've got a big body of work.
Well, my most recent books have been, I wrote 2 textbooks about comics with my husband, Matt Madden. So Drawing Words and Writing Pictures and Mastering Comics, which are out from First Second. And then previous to that, or sort of partially during that period, I co-wrote a book called Life Sucks, which is also First Second. That was a book about extremely young vampires in LA who have really crappy jobs that are, of course, night jobs, and they're sort of forced to have these jobs by their evil vampire masters. And right now I'm working on 2 big books at the same time, one of which, the first volume is coming out in France in April. Trash, Roller Girl of Mars, or in French, Triche Trash, Roller Girl sur Mars. So pretty much the same thing. And that is it's a story about a girl on Mars in about 200 years who is dying to be a roller derby star. But things on Mars are pretty crappy. Like, they just are not going that well. So she has a lot of things to overcome to get to be a roller derby star and possibly more. And the other big project I'm working on is springs out of a book I did in 1999 with Ira Glass of This American Life about how they make their show. Mm-hmm. And so I'm making a new book, and that was short. That was a pamphlet, a 32-page pamphlet. And then this new book is going to be a close to 200-page book about the new generation of radio makers and how they work.
Very, very neat. Oh, man.
When do you expect those to come out?
Well, like I said, Trish Trash, the first volume is coming out from Dago, France in April, and the second volume will be out next January. They're coming out as French albums, so they'll be like 54-page books, and so it'll probably be at least 2 books, if not 4, before they come out in the U.S. We haven't sold the rights yet. They probably won't be out in English until there's like more of the volumes ready.
Very, very cool.
The other one, I'm guessing 2016 probably.
2016?
Yeah.
That seems so far away.
Well, when you're working on a big book,
Oh yeah, I understand.
Time is long. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I expect the script, the first draft of the script is in with my editor right now, and I expect to hear back from her in the next couple of weeks and get into finishing up that draft. And then I'll start drawing. The second half of this year will be like all devoted to that book. So if I finish it by, spring 2015, then it could be out by the end of that year, or the beginning of 2016.
Very, very neat. Now, I know you best, like I said, from your indie work and then your work doing these 2 nonfiction books, Drawing Words and Writing Pictures, and then Mastering Comics, the sequel to it. Mm-hmm. And overall, are you more for educational use of comics, or do you think the entertainment value of them is key to keeping them surviving in our current world?
I guess I just don't see those things as contradictory in any way. You need both, and I guess you don't have to teach comics if you don't, it's not required. But the comics obviously have to be appealing to be viable in society, but appealing can mean all kinds of different things. I mean, for some people it means really challenging, experimental craziness, and for other people it means totally mindless entertainment. And I think that there's room for all of those things and need for everything in between in that whole gamut. And then as far as education goes, my end of education is teaching people to make comics or to use comics in making other kinds of narrative, to kind of think about narrative through, but basically people who want to make narrative, and not bringing comics into the classroom and teaching them from a living. That's not what I do. So I think there's some confusion there sometimes when you talk about education, comics education. The thing that springs to mind is, for most people, is reading comics in the classroom rather than making them.
Right. So, your work in France there, I know you're currently located, excuse me, I was wondering why you're over there right now.
I'm doing a residency at the Maison des Auteurs, which is a really nice facility here that's connected to the Cité de la Bande Dessinée de l'Image, which is like a museum, the Maison des Auteurs. And so it's an institution that's devoted to comics and animation in Angoulême, which is, you may know the name from the big festival that also happens here. That is, of course, it's all those things are connected in the sense that comics is a huge thing here, but the festival is a separate organizational entity from the Cité, which is where I am. So the Cité is the museum and so on. And then the Maison des Auteurs is basically a big studio building. There's like maybe 20 to 25 slots in the building. And cartoonists and animators can apply for residency here. So that may, the application just involves talking about a project you want to do and, sending in your resume and so on. And then your dossier goes into a committee, and they, if they pick you, then you can come. And basically the baseline is that you get a really nice studio. You get free studio space for as long as you've applied for, which can be anything between like 2 weeks and 4 years. Or I guess up front you can only apply for 2 years, but you could stay up to 4 years. And then there's also apartments attached to it if you apply for, if you say that you need housing. And so that can be a great benefit too, but that you can only have that for up to a year. So we actually, my husband, Matt Madden, and I, and our 2 children came here August 2012, and we were awarded studios and an apartment for a year in this small town. And so, moving a family in under full steam, just, school and everything kind of rolling along, trying to stop all that and jump ship and go somewhere else is a huge undertaking. I mean, it is enormous. We're just probably now feeling fully like we got all our administrative stuff done, which is also France. France is like crazy for administration. So anyway, having the apartment and having the help of the staff of the Maison help us, get registered for schools and bank accounts and all that stuff was totally essential to being able to do this. And it's been great. It's been really nice. And, I just have a big, nice studio here. And, we're coming from Brooklyn. And so the life couldn't be more different. I mean, aside from just being France, it's like small town France. And, when the festival's not here, it's very quiet, we have
Right.
small kids, so it's perfect, it's a perfect sort of speed for life. When you have small kids, it's so stressful anyway. It's like you don't need anything else. And so it's been working out really well. We really needed to get away from the craziness of Brooklyn for a while.
You think you're going to try to stay there? Like permanent?
I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. But we'll be here for a little while. We're going to be here for at least a total of 3 years. That's our plan at the moment. And then we don't really know what's going to happen after that.
That is very, very neat. Well, let's see here. Sorry, slight technical difficulties. So can you discuss what project you're working on there that got you the residency?
Well, the 2 projects I told you about are the ones that I'm that I proposed
Ah,
and that I've been
okay.
working on since I got here.
Okay. Never
So,
know.
yeah, so Tush Trash is a book that I have been working on off and on since I just went back and looked since Christmas of 2006. So it is a long time coming, this project. And
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
yeah, I was working with a couple different artists to try to. Yeah, my plan, especially at the time, because I was writing. I was still writing drawing words when I came up with it, and just too busy to think about drawing a giant comic. And so I was looking for an artist, and I talked to several different artists about it, and we had to do tryout pages and all this stuff, and actually signed a contract in 2008 with a different artist. So I was going to write it, and he was going to draw it, and then that just didn't work out. I mean, we just didn't see eye to eye on how I was, how the story was going from, I don't know, how do I put this? It wasn't like he really likes the story, but the way that I tell stories and the way that he tells stories just didn't mesh well enough, and it was frustrating for everybody, so we just kind of stopped. And so then I decided to, at that point, it was like 2010 or 2011, was it 2011, and I was like, well, I'll draw it then, because I had finished my books, and I finally had time to actually make a new comic. So I started doing it before I left Brooklyn, and then been working on getting the first volume all finished and put to bed, and the second volume all drawn since I've been here. And then the radio book I've been working on basically nonstop for the last 2 years, just continuously. The first period I have not been working on is actually the last month since I turned in the script. And before I get it back from my editor, it's like I have this little window of not working on it, which has been really interesting. Mostly really fun.
So these are,
sorry.
I was going to ask, these are large volumes that you're putting out all at once, not like, a comic that's being collected into a trade paperback?
Of Trish Trash, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, have you seen French albums? They're like pretty large, like the oversized hardcover, like Tintin kind of albums.
Okay.
So they're full color and, really nice paper and like large scale, but they're short. They're not lots of pages. It's essentially like the length of like 2 pamphlet comics at a time, or 1 to 2, depending on how many pages you put in it. In my case, It's going to be 54 art pages per volume.
Yeah,
so, like I said,
I was going to say it seems like it would be stressful working on something for a very long time without any kind of feedback, and then releasing it all at once and getting, reaping all of the commentary and actual, profits off of it in a lump sum like that. Because, I mean, we're all webcomic artists. We put stuff out there all at once. Yeah.
It's the way we work these days. It's really uncommon. If you're not in the superhero comics world, it's really uncommon to do much of anything that comes out on a regular basis that you get feedback on a regular basis. I actually, my last sort of big fiction work was La Perdida, that came out first from Fantagraphics and then from Pantheon. And even when I started that, Fantagraphics was more interested in just doing it as a trade, just doing a book. And I wanted to do individual issues because I needed the kick in the pants to do it. I needed to get the feedback and, have it out there because I knew it was going to take me forever to do it. So I put it out in 5 issues with Fantagraphics, and then collected it with Pantheon after that, like a year later or so. And it was good, and the nice thing about this for me is, there's lots of nice things about what this is, but it's interesting in lots of ways because it's although I'm writing it obviously in English, it will be published in French first. They're originating it. And the French publishing world is still much more artist-centered than the American one. So, there's just a lot of support for what we're doing, and, there's just an enormous team of people now descending on this book to get all the pieces ready for it, all of whom are really talented. So I have high hopes for how it's going to turn out. And then when we take it elsewhere, it's already this thing that's got these high production values. It's it's already made. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am of course very eager to have it in English and have my English speaking audience respond to it. And especially since it's a roller derby book, and I love roller derby, and I can't wait for like American players to see it and stuff. But at the same time, I've waited this long, I might as well
What are the
get it right.
what are the sizes of your audiences in France and in English, I guess, audiences? Are they about the same, or is there a huge difference?
I think it totally depends on what work you're talking about. I don't really know, frankly. I mean, how would I know? But if you look at a work like La Perdida, it's sold quite well over time by my lights. I don't know, maybe 20,000 or something like that. Which is pretty good, right?
Yep.
But then you look at a book like Radio, the initial book that I did with Ira Glass, which is just a 32-page pamphlet, and has only really ever been sold either via its first little release was as a pledge premium for public radio, but that was like for two pledge drives. Since then it's been for sale via This American Life's website, pretty much exclusively,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sold over 45,000 copies.
Wow.
And it's like you have to go to their website and order it, and you have to find it, all this other stuff. So it's like, it's just one of these indications to me that there's just really strange audiences for things all over the place. You never know like who you're going to sort of who you're going to pick up. You know what I mean? Like
who you're going to run across.
There's like the different Venn diagrams for all of my books.
Right.
There's always the central audience that you sort of think of. Like, obviously, there's the sort of Fantagraphics, like art comics reading audience who's going to read La Perdida. But then there's also like people who are really interested in travel in Mexico, and there's people who, want to teach it in classes, and there's people who are interested in Frida Kahlo, and who knows what all. There's like all these different potential audiences, and some of all of those audiences may find the book, and it ends up being an interesting crossover for that reason.
And have you published books before in French and English?
Well, I've had two of my books translated into French.
Okay.
La Perdida was translated, and also Life Sucks was translated. And with La Perdida, more than Life Sucks, La Perdida was up for one of the Angoulême Awards in the year that it came out, and it had got really good press, lots of press. And I run into people all the time at comics shows here who have read it, and a lot of cartoonists have read it. A lot of, people I meet professionally here have read it. Now, does the French public read it? Do they know, in sort of the general comics reading public? I have no idea. Probably not. I don't know what the sales were, but they can't have been huge. But they weren't, they weren't dismissible either.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see again. And once again, with the Trish Trash story, I talk about it sort of flippantly, like it's about roller derby, blah, blah, blah. And the initial idea was obviously sort of silly, right? It's kind of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer moment where you have this, sort of silly principle, that then turns into kind of a serious story. It's a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't dismiss the hook. That's usually what the thing that sets it apart from everything else is what,
right.
brings the elevator pitch.
Yeah, exactly. But then, the Trish has, so obviously a large built-in audience of people who like Derby, right? But then there's also, it's not hard sci-fi in the sense that there aren't a lot of spaceships and stuff, but it's really, it is sci-fi. It's like in the future, and there's this world that things have happened in, and things are different. There's technology, blah, blah, blah. And so that's a whole other audience. And so how this book speaks to those two audiences, plus my base audience of people who just like my kind of writing, very character-oriented, dialogue-oriented writing, it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
What are the challenges of publishing in, different regions and languages? Is it just a matter of working with the publisher, finding someone who's interested?
Well, that's obviously a big challenge.
Yeah.
Making sure it gets to the right people, and if you don't know anything about the world in that particular country, you can run into problems where you have the wrong publisher. It's like the wrong profile, or they just aren't good at it, or they don't get it out, they make a shitty edition, or there's lots of different things that can happen. There's the issues with translation, where if you don't know the language at all, or you don't know somebody who knows the language who also knows your work, who can kind of check it for you, you
Yeah.
can end up with horrific things happening.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah, but
So is that
oh
getting
man.
around that? Is that just a bunch of trial and error, or do you have known connections that you always go to the same people, or
well, no, I mean you have to basically use who the publisher wants to use, but
Yeah.
if you get in there early and you're like, look, I want to make myself available, because a lot of times authors just don't get involved in translation at all. But I know Spanish pretty well. Now I know French pretty well. My husband knows French really well. So at least in those two languages, which are really important for me, they're really important markets. I can actually read the translation and get a sense of, find possible problem areas myself. But in order to do that, you've got to tell the publisher ahead of time, like, I really want you to do this. And like using my font, for example, like
Yeah.
if I don't say that and I don't give them my font, they'll use something downloaded off the internet, God knows what all, right? So you really have to get in there early and say, I'm available. I want to help you. Please put me in touch with the translator. Let's talk about specific issues that come up with this book. And you have to be really proactive and really, a part of the process.
I bet that's a great way to help learn the language too, is trying to proofread something that you wrote but in a different language that someone else translated, and you're looking for idiosyncrasies and making sure that your jokes come through, or that the equivalent joke in the other language is represented.
Yeah, I mean, when I was learning Spanish, I translated some of my own work. I mean, I know it would be terrible translation, but just for the activity of like trying to think through my way of thinking, the way I put sentences together, like how would I do that in Spanish,
Yeah.
Right.
And it was never a publication. It was just kind of like as an exercise. But yeah, Matt does a lot of translation from Spanish to English and from French to English. And it is a fascinating art form, and it is an art form. It really is. And the best translators really, they in some sense are like rewriting the entire book.
Yeah, there's obviously, depending on English and French and Spanish have a lot of similar roots, but then if you go to something like Japanese, sometimes you do have to just almost completely rewrite whole sentences or paragraphs to make it, to get the same kind of cultural humor in there. It may be a different joke entirely, but to get the same kind of feel out of it.
Right, and that's what I would always say to translators especially when I was working on my earlier work that was like set in kind of more like a hit, like punk rock bars and stuff, and it was really like these kind of, cool kids trying to be cool and stuff. And I'm like, just make the jokes sound like those kind of people in your country. Like, don't try to make them my jokes. Make them the jokes that work for you, or the slang that works for you. So they don't have to sound American. They just have to sound like the cool kids,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge. That makes a huge difference when you're reading something that it sounds, native and natural, versus because something that's translated competently but not, artfully can read very stilted, or like the jokes are kind of like just left hanging. Yeah.
Well, the Olympics currently illustrate how badly you need translators that actually know what they're talking about. Oh God, have you seen any of the horrible signs and whatnot that needed proofreaders before they should have made those signs?
I've seen a few of those.
I'm sure they're legion. Yes.
Oh, they're horrible. Oh God, they're horrible. Oh my God. Yes, but I've had to read several comics. I took French in high school, and so that's actually where I got started with some of my comics, was getting some French ones from a friend who was over here in New Mexico doing an exchange program, and she brought some with her and gave them to me. And man, they were badly translated.
Yeah,
Man.
it happens.
It was horrible. She said, these are not the right English words. I don't know what they were trying to say, but
Yeah.
Dave, is that your child in the background?
Mm-hmm. That's the wife's child.
Mm.
Okay.
So, Jessica, are there any other? I know that comic book conventions are pretty big over in the States. Is there anything? Is it as big over in Europe, like you said with the festivals and
There are tons and tons and tons of them. Yeah, there's a ton, and they're really different. They have a really different feel from U.S. conventions. They're really centered around exhibitions usually. They often have support from the town or the state to run. And, they may be free for people to get in and or like charge some small amount. But usually they're cheap or free, and they have exhibitions that are like really large and comprehensive and often like highly designed. So there'll be some thematic thing about the way that the room is designed, to go with the exhibition. And then they have tons of people. They often will have people signing, which signing in France is like way more intensive than in the U.S. It's called doing dédicaces, and you, generally speaking, are sort of the unspoken requirement is that you do these like massive drawings inside everybody's books. And they take forever. You have to bring your paints and like do this massive artwork in everybody's books, which is a lot of labor and not a lot of fun for me. But everybody complains about it, but everybody does it. But once you do that, then basically you're as an artist, the festival will bring you in, pay for your fare, put you up in a hotel, pay for all your meals, and then you're required to do between like a couple hours to several hours a day of signings. Sometimes you'll do a talk or something like that. But it's an entirely different. There's no publisher tables, generally speaking. Like there's no, there's a bookstore or even a couple bookstores, a few stands. Maybe if there's a local publisher, they'll have a stand. But it's not like all the publishers are sending out, stands to all of these places. They just have their books there for sale. So it's like totally turned around inside out, where it's centered around the artists.
Wow.
And it's really luxurious sometimes, depending on the festival. It can be a lot of work, doing the dédicaces and stuff, but it's really fun. So, and then, compare that to the U.S. Convention circuit, where like you go, you pay your own way, you buy a table, you set your stuff up, you spend all weekend selling stuff, and maybe making some connections and stuff. And it is fun, I enjoy it, but it's a totally different feeling, completely different.
Yeah, it sounds like a great culture. I mean, the fact that they even have a program where it's like, here, we'll give you an apartment and studio space speaks volumes about.
This is it. This is the only one. But yes, it exists. Yeah. And it is state supported, like that's where the money comes from, is from the state. And they pay admission to get into the museum and into the cinema, and so that is, goes into it as well. But yeah, there's like big state support for the arts here, and that's the secret to these festivals too. And there's festivals like in every town, all over the place. Every weekend there's something going on. And Angoulême, the big festival here, is kind of an exception in that sense, because it's got an enormous presence with individual publishers setting up tables and actually selling their books. Usually not individual artists, the way that there will be at like SPX or something like that in the U.S. You can, but it's not as common. But all kinds of publishers will set up, yeah.
I'm surprised there's not more French comics being imported into America. In fact, the only one I can think of, and it wasn't even imported, is this one called Freak Squealy. It's about like supernatural creatures going to school to become superheroes or something. But it sounds like it's a huge market, and it sounds like it's kind of untapped.
I've got an answer.
Actually, yeah.
I've got an answer for that. Comixology, the digital app. I get my French comics through them. They've got a big collection of them, and every month I check, it gets bigger. That's fairly recent. I know of Viz Media. I know does a lot of different translations from a lot of different languages into English, or you can get just the untranslated versions a lot of times. But you really kind of have to dig for them.
That's a good tip. I'll have to check out
Yeah,
I'll have
and
to
there's
check
lots
out
of
Comixology.
translations coming in through like Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly, and even like larger publishers. First Second does a lot, and uh,
I know Dark Horse has been doing quite a few lately.
Dark Horse does them. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Black
I've
Black
I've got to move. Thanks for inviting me. It was really fun.
Thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, that was Jessica Abel. Sorry, kind of had to cut it a bit short. She only had a little bit of time to record with us today. But still, that was pretty interesting seeing how France is like, comparatively speaking, to the States.
Yeah.
Makes me want to move.
Yeah, no, I was going to
Not
say.
to France itself, but maybe to Europe in general, because it just seemed a lot more artist centered than
Well,
media personality centered like the U.S. is.
yeah. Overall, I found Europe in general is far more comics friendly. The States are getting there, but it's very slow.
Yeah.
Work faster, States. Okay, guys, I want you to update us so far on your Patreon campaigns, how that's been going, since we're hitting your 1 month mark-ish.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, it's the month is rolled over and I got paid, so that's good. It all went straight to bills, but that's mostly what it's for at this point. It was the initial big rush when all of the, active readers decided, yeah, I'll give a few bucks, and then in the last few weeks, it's slowed down obviously, and that's expected. So, I mean, there's not a lot to say about it other than it seems like a pretty good service so far.
So far, though, it's working out for you.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, yeah, and the only thing I wish I had done slightly differently was, I don't like really gating my content at all, and so one of the things I promised for like 10 level backers on up was to give them like previews of upcoming pages, like pencil work and stuff. And I kind of wish I had made it so that everybody could see that stuff, but I don't know. It kind of diminishes the motivation for people to support at a certain level. I mean, ideally, people will support at the level they want to support at, but motivating people to do at a certain level, that's going to help in those kind of borderline cases where someone was going to contribute $5 a month and they're like, maybe I'll try the 10. So, but I guess who knows? Maybe that's something to think about for not really next time, but maybe on the 1 year anniversary, I'll go in and revise stuff or something.
yeah. How about you, Robert? I know you switched over from donation per comic to monthly.
Yes, I did. The rewards were a little bit difficult to judge depending on pledge levels when the backers were able to set a cap to their spending. So if I had a level that was like $10 per comic, which was a lot of money, somebody would say I'd give you $10 per comic, but set their limit at 40 or 50 per month. When I was expecting, however much per, I did 8 or 9 comics every month, and judged my rewards based on that. So I just switched over to say, just per month of comics, no matter how many I post. I mean, I'll keep posting 8 or 9, and hopefully I'll do more. But this gives me a better judge of
more predictable income.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because it's probably on their FAQ page, but I don't know this. When they set their reward limits, is that per creator they're supporting, or is that like across all of Patreon? So if it's like, I'm going to pledge $1 a month or $1 per comic to these 3 different webcomics, but then $10 a month for this one guy who makes whatever, some kind of like, I don't know, trance music that I like or something. If they set their cap at $20, that seems like it would affect, the guy, whoever they're pledging more to, more. So I'm wondering if it's Patreon level spending limits or if it's creator level spending limits.
You probably ask Melanie that because she's the one that actually. How many people are you supporting right now?
Four. Yeah, four right now. Because everybody that I am following now, counting you, Robert, does a monthly donation instead of per comic. I just go ahead and I said, depending upon what their levels were and, what all they were doing and how much I know I can eke out of my tiny budget every month, I went ahead and said, okay, 5 for you, 10 for you, 1 for you.
But did you set a limit to your spending, or just like work your pledges around how much you know you can spend?
I work my pledges around how much I know I can spend. That's how I do it.
Dave, I have no idea.
I'll have to look at their FAQ because that's the one thing that occurred to me recently.
I don't.
Sure,
Yeah,
I would assume that it would be per person that you support.
Yeah, you can put a cap on each one of the ones you support. I don't think you can do it across the board. At least that's the way it looks to me. That's the way I understood it. Yeah, it's kind of a slightly fuzzy, not exactly clear understanding on that one.
Yeah.
But
they're pretty good with email support. If it's not in their FAQ, I can always just email them.
Oh yeah, they get back right away. They're really good about that. When I switched from per comic to per month, I had no idea what was going to happen with the pledges or with the patrons. But once I clicked that button, I looked at it again, and it had kept the patrons in the same reward bracket, even though I had changed the amount, and it also changed it kept their dollar amount exactly the same. So if they were pledging 50 cents per comic, now it's 50 cents per month. So my total dropped way down.
Yeah.
But so I basically just sent them a bulk email saying, this is exactly what happened. If you were pledging 50 cents per comic, now it's 50 cents a month. Please, review it. Change your pledge if you'd like to. Change your reward tier. And now I'm just waiting for people to catch up to do that, so that I could start promoting it again as a monthly campaign.
Yeah, I had added. I had only listed up to a 20 level support because I thought, I just thought that was. Even that might be asking much, but there were a couple people that pledged more than that. So I made a $50 per month level. Mm-hmm. But they had to go in and actually edit their own. So, I emailed them and said, okay, so it still lists you as a $20 supporter, even though there's a new level. So they just had to go in and edit, and they just, put in the same amount, but hit save, and that triggered so that it categorized them correctly.
I sent an email last night to the tech guys asking them if I have to wait for each individual patron to change their reward level, or if they could do it on the back end. But I haven't checked my mail yet. I'm assuming that it has to do with the patron individually.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, we don't have a whole lot else going on. I've been going insane. I dug out. I had told Carrie, and I think at least you, Dave, about an old comic strip I had started a couple years ago, and then it kind of went to all heck, and I just kind of threw it out. I left it on my shelf because I just figured it wasn't going to be worth it. And then I went and looked at it. Then I went and looked at it again, and I realized where I'd messed up. And so guess what? I started again.
You started a new comic strip.
Yes, I did, including the full-page one I'm working on now. So like I said, I'm going crazy. Hopefully I'll start posting probably before the end of this month. Probably here within a week or two.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
You have your website set up?
Yes, I do. The basics of the website. I've got a few little bits and bobs, like I'm trying to finish off the banner design, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's sad. Oh my god, I'm actually doing it.
Excellent.
I'm gonna go panic in the corner for a while with my blanket.
Is your panic blanket?
Yes, it's my wizard blanket. Anytime I'm drawing, I have the wizard blanket on, so that way I'll not panic. I don't know why, but the blanket fort works, okay? It has my magical powers.
Dave, I wanted to ask you how you go about promoting your Patreon page. What have you found that works?
Well, the first, I think, 2 comics that I posted with the Patreon, they need to actually have a guide on how to pronounce it, because I don't know if it's Patreon or Patreon.
I'm pretty sure it's Patreon, because I watched a couple of videos with the guy who founded it, and he says Patreon all the time.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I had just I post a comment underneath the comic with, oh, here's what's going on and whatever else, and I had a paragraph with just a link in it, and then after 2 comics a week of that, I posted another one, and I actually spent time to draw a picture, with my main character decked out like in Patreon merch, and then like kind of wrote the hey, support the comic, but in her voice, instead of hey, give me money, and that one seemed to work. That also coincided with a page that I had been planning for a really long time. That it showed the fact that one of the characters' powers came with a skill tree.
I love it.
which people really dug. I think that comic got like almost 700 comments, which is crazy.
Wow.
So that one was that was the big one, that was the big push. And now I just have a little paragraph under each comment that is just a very truncated version of that. And I want to change it to something, even a little less obtrusive, but still have it, front and center, but not blinking and, arrows pointing at it kind of stuff.
Little chippy version of Sydney running around with it above her head going.
Yeah, right now I have a tip jar button, which actually links to a page with here's a few options. Here's like an Amazon support link.
Yeah,
here's a
I actually
PayPal link.
did that. I copied you and put a tip jar on my own site.
Yeah, and I think I may want to expand that button and say here's 3 options, and I don't know if I want it to take you straight to the option, or because I kind of like the intermediary page where people can read what the options are, but I don't know. It's the click to purchase kind of thing. The more levels, the more steps you put in between, the more drop off you've got. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think maybe just one step to the options is good enough.
Yeah.
So just put more options on that page.
Yeah. So we'll see when I have time to actually do that.
I understand that.
Very cool. All right, guys. I think we should go ahead and wrap up. This is a pretty good one.
Excellent.
Also to mention, it's the 1-year anniversary of the podcast.
Congratulations.
Yay! We made it! It didn't die! Ugh. I had so many people telling me it was going to go down in flames.
Yeah, it's just a matter of keeping at it.
Yeah.
I'm just annoying enough to keep poking people going, hey, want to record? Hey.
hey.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Hey, mine. All right, guys. Well,
So who's next?
I'm trying to get a interview set up with Art Baltazar. And after that, Leah Hernandez. But everybody, juggling schedules is always a fun thing. But beyond that, hopefully this next one I'll be introducing at least 1, if not 2, comics. And we'll have to poke at Carrie and see if she wants to see if she's going to set up a patron page. Or do you think she should wait a year?
I mean, my opinion is, it's always nice to have that whatever trickle of revenue you can generate, but I think there's a certain amount of critical mass that is really helpful when you set something like that up.
Well, yeah, they'll be hitting their 2-year mark here up in a couple more months, but I figure I don't see them having a huge following just yet. You know, it's usually around the 3 or 4 year mark that a lot of comics start really getting higher readership.
Well, I mean, that also depends on, the quality of the content you're putting out and how aggressively they if they advertise, and a lot of it also has to do with just getting lucky on a Reddit link or whatever. But again, that comes back to the quality of the comic, where
Yeah.
if you may get a deluge of readers, but if they don't stick around, it doesn't do you much good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what her readership level is. I'm not quite sure what her traffic is, but and I don't know what the right level to do that at is. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I think they should wait about 1 more year-ish. Because honestly, they've got a good-sized archive, but I don't know if they even have enough for their first book yet.
Yeah, it depends on how they lay out the book. Doing the 3 to 5 panel strip, you wind up usually putting maybe 2 on a page, depending on how you lay out the book.
Yeah.
So how many pages do you want your first book to be? There's always questions like that.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I don't know, doing a Kickstarter for the first book and then doing a Patreon. I don't know. That's kind of tough. I mean, I went with the Patreon just because I really like to try to do my comic full time, and I was in a position where I wasn't, spending 40 hours a week at work.
Yeah.
So I figured, why not? So in my case, the Patreon account came first. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, I guess it's just each individual person has their own reasons for it, and own whatever works for them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. Well, thanks for stopping by this one. We will hit you up next month.
Great, thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye everybody.